everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to do another play on words pots, my passion fruit, and I love this one. It's so much fun, and they're so cute. Oh my gosh, I love these. Anyways, we're going to start bringing in some red clay here, and you're going to make like two balls, and they can be different sizes. I mean, these are small. These are like 1/4 of an inch and smaller, but you know, just it's really your own judgment. But anyways, you're going to make two balls, and then once you do, you're going to turn both of them into teardrops. So against the surface of your tile, you're going to roll them into teardrops. You place both of them together and then pull the bottom. And this will give you what I call my pulled heart. After you get done making this one, you're going to go ahead and make some more balls. You're going to create more of these little pulled hearts. And look at how tiny that one is. That's very tiny. As you can tell here, I've done this so much that I've been able to make teardrops in both my hands together and then place these together. So this is a repetition thing. Some of this is a little bit of practice, and when you make these little pulled hearts, that's the case. The nice thing about doing this is that it also prepares you for other things when you create in polymer clay. If you're new to polymer clay, this is an easy way of just getting your hands to work with the clay and creating teardrops and other forms. All right, so here I'm bringing in my terracotta pot, and this has been prepared ahead of time. If you want to know how I did my terracotta pots, there's actually a video on this. If you go through, about a year ago I made these, I think, or so. But go through there and you'll find the little video on making the terracotta pot. And this way then you could create a whole bunch of these. Just say, okay, I want to make a ton of them. Anyways, I'm taking my green wire here, and this wire is like a 22 gauge. You can also use a 26 gauge or even a 24 gauge, that's fine. And I'm just kind of curling up the wire. They are fairly long. I'm going to go ahead and use my wire cutter, and I'll trim this stuff down a little bit as I go. But I'm just curling them up like they're like little vines coming up out of this pot. So just a small thing here, I sometimes use my needle tool to kind of work my wire around. It gives a nice tight curl, so you might want to try that if you're like, okay, I want something a little bit of a tighter curl than some of these loose like loops. You can definitely use that and it works really great. Okay, so now we're going to bring in our super glue and my needle tool, and I'm going to start attaching in each of these little hearts. And no, they have not been baked. These are unbaked hearts. I'm just placing them right on the wire with just a touch of super glue. So, like barely a dot, just something to get it to hang on there. And yes, I'm not using my liquid Sculpey here, and this is because with the liquid Sculpey, it's great for clay on, the clay on clay thing, but I really need more of an epoxy glue to make sure those hearts stay on the wire. All right, so at this point, I've put all my hearts onto my pot here, and I baked this for about 7 to 10 minutes. Once I have that done and it's all cooled down, I'm going to come in here with my white acrylic paint, and I'm going to start placing little dots on my hearts. And I decided when I started doing this that, I thought, okay, we could dot the whole type, the whole heart, right? But I thought, no, let's just go ahead and do it on half. Do it on half the heart and see what that looks like. And I loved it. It just added a nice little detail, and it kind of surprises you a little bit. We only have half the heart decorated in a pattern, and then the other half is nice and just a solid red or pink. Okay, so now we need to bring in our green, and this is just a leaf green clay, and I'm just going to roll some balls. I'm going to press them flat, create that point, and drag the line up. And I'm making these very simple. I'm not going to make them terribly detailed, and we're going to place them right at where the heart and the wire meet. It's just a nice little added feature to it. It makes it look like, oh yeah, this is a little growing plant. And so I'm going to be adding in these little leaves all the way around with each of these different little hearts. Now you don't have to place a leaf at every single heart. That can get, ad nauseum. But I do suggest placing them in here and there, making it the way you wish to have it look. All right, so at this point I've placed in, as many leaves as I want to do, and I decided to make a bigger leaf, and we're going to go ahead and place that down at the base of the plant. And this way then it really adds more and more to that idea that this is a little growing plant. It's really kind of fun. And I place generally about 3 leaves right around at the base of my terracotta pots. Now, once I placed in all of my leaves, I decided to bring in my red again, and I decided I needed to fill in right where all of them came together. I don't know, it just didn't look right to me. So I created this little, well, I should say fairly decent sized little red ball, placed it right at the center, and then brought in my knitting needle to go ahead and make a little indent in that ball. So once we have this baked, I can go in much later and place a little rhinestone in there. Now, once in a while on my terracotta pots, I don't always join up my strips that help form the pot really well. So this is a place where you can go ahead and decorate. So I created another little heart, and we're going to place him right at where that join mark is. And this way then it kind of covers up any kind of flaws or anything that's going on there. And yes, my clay is extremely sticky here, probably a little too sticky. But I put that heart right over the top there. If I have to, I even reform it if it's too sticky in this case. But that way then it covers up any join mark. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to place in our little sign for this pot, and you're going to see how I create those in just a moment. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I add in some more hearts, add in a little paint, and finish up this pot entirely. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I was having a little bit of trouble trying to super glue in the back here. And so if you're having a hard time trying to do that, bring in your little wax tool to help pick up the rhinestone, because my fingers were just way too big. And so my little wax tool just made all the difference in the world. Okay, so we're going to start making some hearts here, and I brought in my Kemper cutters. I can't get away from these things. I love them. I have all the different little sizes all the way down to the little tiny itty bitty one. And I'm just cutting just regular hearts. I thought, why not just cut some regular hearts, because I'm going to use these. If I don't use them in this project, I know I'll use them later on. They always come in handy no matter what. It's kind of like making little balls with the dots and stuff. I like to indent and then place the rhinestone in. This is kind of another one of those go-to kinds of forms, and so I create hearts like nuts. once I've made all the hearts I think I could possibly use, I come back in with my knitting needle and I like to add in little details, especially dots. They come in handy, they create a little form, a little texture even. And I'm making dots, but you know what? You can make even little lines or whatever. That's the nice thing about those knitting needles. I just find all sorts of uses for them. Now, as I was creating these hearts, I thought I want to do something a little extra here. So I brought in some stamps I've had actually for a very long time. And I will place a link in the description area if I can on these particular stamps. I think they're out there, so I'm going to go looking. I'll find it. I'll put it in the description area. And then once I had this clay rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. This was some silver clay I had, and I just stamped up this area, and then I'm going to bring my cutters back in, and I'm going to cut some more hearts out of this. I really thought I needed something with a texture to it, and this was just where I was going to go. So I'm going to take some of my little hearts here. I'm going to create some really fun little textured hearts, and then I'm going to bring in the paint, and I'm going to just kind of roll my finger across here on these hearts and have some fun with the look of it. Okay, so once I got going with these hearts, I had to make more. And while I was doing so, I thought, you know what, I want to bring in that color shift pastel paint. I'm going to put the red down first, the darker one, but then I decided once I had that down over the texture of these hearts, I wanted to add just a little swipe of that lighter pink over the darker one, and it looked really great. It was a nice way to mix the two paints together on top of these hearts. Okay, so the other way I like to use my Kemper cutters when it comes to creating my hearts is I like to make, like take the larger ones, make some big ones, and then take the smaller sized hearts, create another color of smaller size, and then place those on top of the larger ones. It's just another way in which I use these little Kempers, and it really creates a nice dynamic when you start creating or putting your hearts into the pots. All right, now we're going to start working on the signs. And right here, this is my transfer technique in action. Yes, I've made some words in the Liquid Sculpey. If you want to see how I do that, go back to my transfer technique in liquid polymer clay. I want to say the second or third one was the best. It really kind of highlighted how I did this. And this clay is super, super thin. We're talking paper thin, if not maybe less than paper thin. And the clay I'm backing it on is also super thin. I want to say I probably rolled that out on my pasta machine on the thinnest setting possible, which was like a number 9 on my Atlas pasta machine. Now once I had that, of course, I'm bringing in my scissors and I'm trimming this down to what I really like. Here's the thing on this. If you want to go ahead and make sure you don't have any troubles with it, make sure you bake this for about 10 minutes. If you bake this for about 10 minutes, it should be really, really flexible, which is what you want. That little sign has been baked, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And we're going to bring in our black clay, which has been rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. And I put a wire down and I thought, okay, we'll just go ahead and have that inserted into it. You know what? I didn't really need that. I rather would have the other way where it's just a solid sign and you don't need to have any kind of wire going up into it. It turned out to be my least favorite sign that I made, but if you want to do that, you can, because then you can slip your wire right into the sign and you don't have to worry about where you're going to place it. You have a number of different areas with, the little hearts that are going on. Now, that being said, I'm bringing in my Liquid Sculpey and I'm going to attach in my sign to this little unbaked piece of clay. This will then be baked one more time, and I want to say I baked it for about another 7 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, and that works just fine. Here I decided I was going to go ahead and bring in some of my clay hearts, and that these have already been baked, okay? And I'm going to bring in a little bit of my liquid Sculpey, and I'm going to just attach in those little hearts to my signs. We'll bake these once again. That way then the liquid Sculpey will attach in the baked clay to the unbaked. Here I got tired of, you might say, having the two words put together, so I decided let's go ahead and cut them in half and then place them down onto another piece of unbaked clay, creating another little different sign to play with. And as you know now, I took this sign and I placed it into that first pot that we had created. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and start creating that second passion fruit terracotta pot, and I'm going to bring in these wires. You know, I had a lot of wire sticking out. After a while, it just drives me nuts. So I had to pick and choose which ones I thought, okay, I want to curl this around, or I want to leave these upward so that they can create or be stems for holding some of my hearts. And that's what we did here. Once I get some of this wire curled up, I'm going to go ahead and bring in some of those textured hearts. And these hearts are going to be unbaked so that they can go right directly over the wire. It'll make an indent on the back side of the heart, and then I'm going to bring in my super glue. I'm going to make sure it's kind of glued in. You know, yeah, I could bake it, but nah, I don't want to go through all that. And besides, this isn't jewelry, so it's a little different. And then I'm going to place another heart right over that wire part. So this way then it's sealed in. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then you're going to be able to bake this. From here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I create more of these hearts, placing them on the wire and defining up this terracotta pot. Once again, I'm going to start adding in some leaves, and I want to say these hearts have not yet been baked, or they can be. It's truly up to you. My rule of thumb when it comes to baking is if it becomes unmanageable for me to handle without messing up something I already created, then I go and I bake it. And I bake it for about 7 to 10 minutes. At this point, I have yet to bake this little pot, and part of it was because I wanted to throw in one more heart there, and I used, of course, my liquid Sculpey to place it in so it would attach real well. And I kind of got ahead of myself. I thought, well, let's go ahead and do the painting bit a little bit. So I painted the bottom part of the pot here with that metallic paint, and that's just fine. Just make sure it's all nice and dried up, and then throw it in your oven for about 7 to 10 minutes. Once this little terracotta pot got baked, after that, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more painting. I'm going to add in some more hearts that have already been baked. And yes, I just use my super glue at that point. Once I have that done, I'm going to put in the finishing touch of adding in a few little rhinestones and finishing up this terracotta pot. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up this second terracotta pot. All right, so this is my favorite terracotta pot, and I want to say right off the bat, this terracotta pot is not to scale, and this is due to what I'm bringing in here. These little cutters, I had just recently found them, and yes, I will put a link to these in my description area, so if you want to go ahead and order some, you can. I love these things. They were so cute, but you have to make sure that you go ahead and roll your clay out on the right, I want to say, the right thickness. So you could do a number 2 setting or a number 1 setting to really make sure you get the nice little impression of the words. I loved that. They really mimic little heart candies that you find around Valentine's Day. And with Valentine's coming up, this is one of those perfect little pots that I just loved. Oh my goodness, you could make a couple of these and either give to your friends or your hubby or whoever. Anyway, I'm just bringing in, or your significant other. Anyway, I'm bringing in my super glue. I'm trimming this down a little bit more, and I'm going to place these hearts into this terracotta pot. Now I made a few extra of these hearts, and I decided I was going to go ahead and just lay them flat on the surface, and this way then I could just make a little indent and then bake them and then glue them in later. So you have that option too. You don't necessarily have to go ahead and have it fresh clay right on the wire there. You could bake them ahead of time and then glue them in. As you can tell here, I added in a little bit of paint on the surface of those bigger hearts. I'm now also adding in some smaller hearts to these larger hearts, just kind of giving them a little bit more detail. Okay, so a few of these hearts I did not bake, and in particular on this one, I was adding white paint to it, and I kept feeling like it wasn't going down right. And part of the reason why I was adding in the white, and I probably should have just made a white heart, but I wanted that dark red to show up to show the words. So that's why I was adding in the paint here. And so I'm trying to use a brush instead of my finger, because the finger thing worked to a certain point, but then it didn't. And I washed off the acrylic paint at least 2 times. And that's why you're seeing that residual there when I came back in with the brush. There was a little bit of paint left, and it really left a neat effect. So if you want to try something like that, I suggest trying it. It's something different. Here I brought in some of that Color Shift pastel pink type paint, and I thought I'd do that with some of these darker hearts. You know, when I look back on it now, I was cutting a lot of red hearts. I probably should have gone with the lighter hearts, but I wanted the words to show up too. Um, you know, I think you need to have a little bit of both. A little bit of light hearts, a little bit of dark ones, but the paint was fun too, and I had some fun with that. This being said, I would say maybe use a little bit of a lighter paint and use the color shift as maybe a highlight on some of these hearts because it doesn't show up really great. You do see the shimmer, but you know, I think maybe a lighter paint here and there could have worked too. Okay, so right here, I wanted to just kind of mention, I was only going to stick with just 3 hearts in this thing. And, you know, I had some pretty tall stems, but these were fairly decent sized hearts too. I had a few left over and I thought, wait a minute, I could put one down below it might look really good. And it really did help the design entirely. So once I did that, I took some of those other like more textured hearts, put them on either side of the more, you know, the little saying hearts, and this really completed up the main look to this terracotta pot. So I need to mention the back side of these little terracotta pots. You can just decorate the front and it would look great, but I had to add in extra hearts. And right here where you see the stems kind of coming up into the hearts, we need to cover over that. So I took my extra hearts, whatever I had left over, I had quite a bit to pick from, and I just placed it right over the top of those little wires that are sticking into these hearts, and it looked great. From here, I'm just going to go ahead though and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up this passion fruits pot number 3. So my fourth and final passion fruits pot really is just a hodgepodge. I had a lot left over, so I thought, let's just make one more for the heck of it. I had this spare pot kind of sitting around, and it was the least decorative type pot I had when it came to wire, which actually made it nice. It was nice not having to deal with a ton of wire. So I only had the three, and I could come in with one of the bigger hearts, place it on top, and then add in whatever I wanted. And in this particular pot, the difference between it and the others was instead of adding leaves down at the base of the pot, I added hearts. And I was going to use the signs, but I didn't like the look of it. It just didn't look right. So I decided to do the sign. Actually, I cut out another little piece of the clay there and put it right at the bottom of the pot itself. So those were really the main differences here on this particular terracotta pot. All right, so this is the end result of creating my little passion fruit play on words pots in polymer clay. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest of hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.